Okay, so in this video what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to access internal types. Yesterday I was talking with my business partner Javier, and he asked me how do you access an internal type, and we have done that in the past, um, because in XAF, most of you know that we use XAF. In the Blazor part, there are a lot of services that are marked as internal. So you cannot create an instance and you cannot access the type to resolve it from the dependency injection. So in this little example, what I will show are two different things: is how you get the type instance of an internal type, and also how you manipulate the methods of a class that implements an internal interface or is internal itself, and how you can access the methods and the properties. Okay, so first let's check the example. So here what I have is I have class 1, which is marked as internal, and also I have an internal interface. So in dependency injection, you usually tell the service resolver, like, this is the interface type that I want to get a service that implement this, so you get me the instance of that service. So you at least need to have access to the type. So you can say like type of my interface and get the dependency. But this is impossible in here because this is marked as internal, so this interface can only be used in this assembly. So, or within this namespace actually. So that can be kind of tricky in general. There are several ways that you can access that and several limitations depending on what you're doing. So also, well, we have the class 1 that is internal, implements the interface, and class 2 which is empty. So now if we go to test, I have two tests in here. So let's check the first test. And here the trick is, if you want to get the type instance or the type class of something that is internal, you do something like this. Let me make this explicit so it makes more sense. Okay, so usually you can do a type of my interface or something like that, but since it's internal, we cannot do that. It will give us a compilation error. So what you do, the trick is that you do type of any other type in that assembly that is holding the internal interface or the internal type. Then you tell it assembly, then you tell get type, and then you pass the full qualified type name. So like in here, the full qualified type name of that is demo library my interface. So in here we will have type instance. So with that type instance, you can use it to resolve it from the dependency injection, for example. So let's run this test, and you will see that it will pass that the full name of this type is what we said that was the full qualified name. So see, success exception. So the test succeeded. So let's continue. If we run it, you will not see that exception. That's part of the testing infrastructure. So if we just run it, pass. So, oh no, it's still executing, but pass. So okay, so that's case 1 where you need to get the type actually. And then the second case is, okay, let's say that I resolve it from the dependency injection, but that will return an object usually. And since I cannot access the type to cast it, then I have another problem. I cannot access the methods. And for that I can do something that is kind of really ugly, which will be do reflection and invoke the methods by reflection, but I have this beautiful nugget in here. Reflection magic. You can find it in NuGet.org or in their GitHub page. So, okay. So in here I do something different is I'm resolving the class type. In this case, I'm resolving class 1, so demo library class 1. And then with the activator, I create the instance. Why can I create the instance of this? Well, because this has basically an empty constructor. That is why it's not even showing in here. But even if you have a constructor, you can pass the other parameters. Maybe it's requiring a string or so many other, or so any other instance of objects. So you can pass the constructor. It's an array of values basically. So that's a no-brainer. But usually you will, nowadays in Net 5, 6, and Core, you will resolve it from the dependency injection. And they will do create the instance for you. Okay, so we resolve, again, the same trick. We use any class on that assembly to resolve the assembly. Then we get the type by using the full qualified name. And then in this case, this will be different maybe in your case, depending on the constructor that you're using. In this case, I'm not using any constructor. It's like an empty constructor. But if you put comma here, you see that you can pass, I think, an array of objects, which are which should match the signature of the constructor. So after doing that, we have an instance in here. Then how do we access the methods or the properties? Well, like to access something, you can, for example, I can put this in a variable, because this as dynamic is creating a dynamic object based on reflection magic. If you go here, we will see the definition of that. And see, it comes from reflection magic, and it returns you a dynamic object. So after you do that, you can access the methods as, I mean, the IntelliSense and autocomplete will not work, but you can just type the name, pass parameters if it's needed, or access the properties as if you were using like a normal type. The only difference is that in the design time, it will not show the autocomplete or IntelliSense, but you can just invoke them and get the result. Also, the results should be type of bar, or you should cast them, because this we know from here that this returns a string, but since there is no information about that method actually here, this is returning an object, like a dynamic result basically. So in here I'm doing, I'm casting the result to string, and I'm comparing if it's the same string that I was expecting. So in here you can see that this is actually returning a string that says hello world. So let's give it a try. So we execute the method and see, we did all the casting, created the instance, and then see, we got the value, hello world. But that's a dynamic result or an object somehow. So I cast it to string, and then I compare it, and this will give the pass exception, success exception. So see, it's good. So now if I stop this and I just run all tests, they will both pass. So that's how you access private or internal types. Maybe I will do another example later with the dependency injection, but that will be more related to dependency injection actually than to resolving internal types. So here you see both of them pass. I will commit this to GitHub and put the link in the description of the video. So see you guys, and see you on the next video.